Most people think they need more leads. And if you can double your conversion rate, you can double your revenue without changing it. It's much easier to double your conversion rate than it is to double your leads, in my opinion. And it's also much more enjoyable. You need less staff because you're not dealing with as many leads, right? Your team's not as burnt out having to track and follow up with as many leads either. And you're spending money on ads. You're not having to spend as much, right? Which is also increasing profitability.
Welcome to the Cash Physical Therapy Headquarters podcast. Our crew here is a couple members short, but we're going to keep it just as impactful as the previous episodes. We have our co-hosts, Bagge and Will Schop here. And we're going to chat today about the discovery call, why it's so important, and how everything that happens downstream in terms of sales in your practice starts from that first phone call conversation, how to take control of it, how to train your team, how to make sure that our conversion rates are at the level that sustains a healthy practice. Now, before we get into this, I do want to mention something. About 1 or 2 times a month, we figured that we want to be able to answer exact questions all the listeners and all the physical therapists out there have, because some questions are more nuanced. Some questions might be asked anonymously. We're going to put the link under the show notes. The link is clinicalmarketer.com/ask. And it is a live page that you can put any questions you have about running a physical therapy practice, training a team, the investments, the lifestyle, anything you want to know about being a business owner in the PT space, you can ask on there. And 1 to 2 times a month, the podcast that we're going to be recording and putting out is going to be based on the questions that are asked there. If there's ever a time to get your exact question asked in extreme detail, now is it. Make sure you take a look at that link. As we dive into this episode, the ability to take control of the sales call and the discovery call at the beginning is one of the first in-person touch points that any patient has before they come into work with you. And the importance of this cannot be undersold. It is the start of the cascade of this person eventually coming in with you, getting the result they want, working with your team, and you making the money and growing the practice. So I'm going to have Ben kick it off. There's some surprising numbers of what you can do when you key in on this. I'm going to have Ben go into that.
Yeah, for sure. I want to preface that after over 100 different clinic owners, this is the biggest bottleneck for 90% of people that we start working with. Like Zach was talking about, it's such a cascade effect downstream. First, it's usually the first impression, first time that they're interacting with you on a human level. Obviously, go to your website, stuff like that. They're interacting with your brand there, but it's really that first impression. You get one chance, right? Not only does how that phone call impact, do they book or not? But once they do come in for that evaluation, do they actually buy a plan of care? I tell our physical therapists, our goal with that phone call is to get it to the 1 yard line. So our physical therapist can run it for a yard into the touchdown. That is the goal of the phone call. So many people are struggling with, I just need to get better at in-person conversion rate because it's not great. The reason it's not great is you're doing a lot of the great things within the evaluation, but what happened in the phone call is not setting you up for success. And so first part is making sure that you are setting yourself up success and not having to ask, like for our PTs, they shouldn't have me having to throw a 50-yard touchdown pass to get this to the end of the touchdown for a touchdown, right? Much easier. And the big thing with this phone call as well, most people think they need more leads. And if you can double your conversion rate, you can double your revenue without changing it. It's much easier to double your conversion rate than it is to double your leads. And it's also much more enjoyable. You need less staff because you're not dealing with as many leads. Your team's not as burnt out having to track and follow up with as many leads, and you're spending money on ads. You're not having to spend as much, which is also increasing profitability. And so this is what I mean, why it's so important to make sure that you have a great phone call. People ask me all the time, what's the number one reason that Pro+Kinetix has scaled to where it has? If I could pick one thing, it's our phone call. We have an amazing phone call process and experience, and it sets us up for success for the entire patient journey, not just for the in-person conversion rate into a package, but also setting people up for continuity enrollments on the back end as well. You can't really overstate how important the phone call is, and it's way more impactful than getting more leads.
I think to look at it as is like us as physical therapy practice owners, especially in the out of network and cash sense, we're always looking for ways to differentiate ourselves from the market, right? How do we state to the market that we're different? Like, cause you look at treatment, a lot of times treatment can look the same, right? The same exercise is going to work here. It could work in an insurance mill technically, right? Or whatever modality you provide or whatever kind of doctorate level education you have. We talked about the last episode, as Will mentioned, even one-on-one PT is getting commoditized, right? So I think the phone call is the start of the biggest differentiator you can have. What's a typical phone call when they call an insurance clinic? It's, hey, what insurance do you have? Okay, we'll get you booked here. We have this opening. They don't find out anything about the client or patient. They don't find out what their goals are. They don't find out like what identity are they chasing after versus just like, hey, what's your insurance? How far do you live? This is how many times you got to come in. Can you commit to that? It's very transactional. Whereas every conversation we try to have is transformational conversations, not transactional conversation. And we look at it as not as like, oh man, we have phone calls. Oh man, we have to do this email or that email. It's like we get another opportunity, another touch point to potentially transform this person's life. And this is the first one. So I'm going to go over to Will here because I know Will's team is very good at it. And he has a different script than most folks do, because I think one thing about Will's team that a lot of folks can learn from is how sure they are in what they provide and the belief they have in what kind of service they're providing. Will, can you speak to how did you instill that culture and that belief, especially in your phone call staff and obviously the rest of your team as well? How do they believe so heavily this is where the person is going to get the best help that they're looking for?
Yeah, that's a good point. I've coached hundreds of clinicians on their sale. I love sales. It's a transference of trust, and it's an opportunity to give people exactly what they need to get the results that they want and really transform their life. And I have an example, like we have this lifelong client, this guy, Bob. He's a golfer. He's a member at a really great country club out here. And he's been with us for a long time. We've been working on his back and his knees and his shoulder. And now it's like fitness and just a ton of different things. 2 years after he started with us, he took us out to his club and we were golfing. And at the end of it, we were sitting in the men's lounge having a cocktail. And he was like, you know what? Still remember the first phone call that we had. It was like a 42-minute conversation. And we were talking about his back and how much things that he's tried and how he couldn't get to a full round of golf. He would play 9 holes and he would have to stop, 12 holes and have to stop. And after working with us and talking to him, telling him stories about the people we worked with, he went on a 5-day trip and played 5 rounds in Scotland, no back pain. And he was just telling us how much he changed his life. And it was that initial phone call that got him to buy in, because Zachy, like you said, he's been at other places and it's like, oh, what's your name? What's your date of birth? What's your insurance? Nobody's going to take the time to actually hear their story and talk through the shit that they've had to do over the past years. So yeah, that initial phone call is so important. Getting the team bought in is important too, because we have over 355 star Google reviews. We're the most in the LA area. We have a 96% satisfaction rating from all of our clients. And it's like, we're here to change lives, and you don't have to sell something to do that. And when it comes to sales in general, like over the last few years, have you ever bought something that you felt sold to on? Like I never bought anything where I felt sold, because it's impossible to sell something to somebody that they don't want or need. Right. And so like, that's a big thing for us too, is like, it doesn't even feel like sales. We're just the next step to helping them change their lives and have one of the best investments that they ever have had to themselves.
Yeah. And what's important to think about that too is like, I think people, when they hear that comment, like, do they ever felt like they bought anything they've been sold? They'll automatically think like, oh, when's the last time I bought a car? When's the last time I bought a house? It's like, okay, there's salespeople built into that, but it goes to any single product you've ever bought. There's people working behind the scenes of those companies, making sure that their whole job is that you buy. So their whole job is sales, whether it's their landing page, whether it's their ads that you see, whether it's like a friend talking about it, that's the whole sales process. So 100%, like I think people always say is like people love buying shit. They don't like being sold. Right.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, I think it comes down to the ability to feel like you have a decision and a choice in the matter. Right. Always having that conversation and leading with curiosity. A lot of the clinicians I've talked to that are still doing the phone calls, there's a lot of fear that they start with a phone call. I'm like, oh, what if they say no? Right. So let's talk about the no's people get. Is the no that you get on a discovery call usually about money, or is it something else?
Yeah, for us, there's 5 things. And something I tell our team is the goal of a discovery call is not to get the person to say yes. It's to help them make a decision, right? It's to help them make the best decision for them. And so we go into it and it's like, hey, if we're not going to be a good fit for this person, we're going to send them somewhere else. Like, that's fine. And so first and foremost, I tell the team, the goal is not for them to say yes. It's for them to make the best decision for them. And we're acting as the guide. Typically, when we are doing these discovery calls, we're going to have 5 objections. The first one is around finances. The second one's around insurance. The third one's around spouse. The fourth one's around time. And the fifth one is around indecision, right? Like, I need to think about it pieces. And for us, it's like, we follow all the sales stuff, the AAA, where it's like, hey, acknowledge whatever they say, associate it to something that they'll resonate with, and then ask another question. So they could say, oh, I can't do it right now because the sky's purple. And it's like, totally understand that you wouldn't be able to do this because the sky's purple. That totally makes sense. We had somebody come in here a couple months ago And they didn't want to do this because the sky was purple. They ended up doing it though, and ended up getting the best results possible. And now they're back to running pain-free XYZ. And so I guess aside from the sky being purple, is there anything else that's making you uncomfortable moving forward with this thing? Or is there anything else where you feel like you're not going to get the results that you're looking for here? Right? You can, like, they can say anything. And people think it's about handling objections, but you actually handle objections at the very beginning of the phone call in the first 5 minutes. And it's all about creating that rapport, that connection to the prospect so that they can feel comfortable opening up to you. If they can't open up to you, you're going to be at these surface level objections the whole time, and you're not going to be able to help guide them to make the best possible decision for them. An example is like if you have a friend that's like an acquaintance, right? And if they came to you with a problem, or if they were doing something that maybe they shouldn't do, and you go to them and maybe you're not so connected and you're like, maybe you shouldn't do that, but it's very surface level. There's not a lot of conviction there. Versus if you have your best friend, they're making this decision that's probably not going to be best for them. What are you going to say to them? You're like, dude, you cannot do that. I'm not going to let you do that. You're going to fail if you do this thing. Like, this is a very bad decision. I'm not going to allow you to do that. Well, the reason that you have that conviction is because you have a deeper connection with them. And so the game is, how can you create a deep, strong connection with somebody within the first few minutes of the phone call so that you feel like you have the ability and the conviction and the charisma to have that deeper conversation with them to guide them to where they need to be, whether that's going to be working with you or with somebody else. Your job on that phone call is to guide them to the best possible decision for them. And that's where the front end of marketing comes in, where you need to attract the right people so that you can have the conversation with the right people in the beginning.
Yeah. Talking about that first phone call, pre-framing the first phone call, what they actually can expect. I think a lot of folks that I've spoken to in the physical therapy community typically feel like they're performative on phone calls or sales during evaluation. They feel like they're putting on a performance. And a lot of it is because they're just handed a script and said like, oh, just follow the script. The script works, right? And it kind of reminds you of that Office episode where Michael was selling those fat loss pills and he was just continuing to have a conversation. And as much as Michael was a kind of an idiot in the office, what he did very well, and that's why he was the best salesman in the entire show, was build genuine relationships with people. When he took that guy out to Applebee's and have those conversations first before we even talked about it, that should be a similar direction folks take. I think there are specific traits that the top closers or top salespeople in this industry have. And I think Ben is a good person to speak on this because his team does it very well. Ben, what traits do you see or what beliefs do you see people walk into those phone calls with that all the top people that either you've hired or you've trained kind of all have?
Yeah, high charisma and high energy are the two main things. High energy, like if you go on the call, act like you're going to get that too. I talked to one of my PTs about a year ago. He was going through some tough times personally for about a week. And you get to the end of the week, he's like, man, this week was rough because of the X, Y, and Z in personal life. But it seemed like also everybody I talked to was just miserable. And it's like, well, do you think there's a correlation to the energy that you brought in and how they were on the call? Like, yeah, 100%. Right. And so if you are bringing low energy, if you're like, every person I get on call with only wants to talk about insurance, they don't really seem like they care about their health, they're unpleasant, you're not building up that rapport with them, you're not bringing great energy. And so the energy is the biggest one. Are you able to put personal things aside and every day show up with high energy and act like you're having the best day ever? Because if you're gonna, like Will talked about, you're gonna be able to have that connection. By having that connection, you have that trust. And that's something too that Will does a really good job on his call. Will actually does some of our sales coaching, meets with my sales team once a month.
They're so good.
Yeah. Anyways, one of my reps was like, I just don't know how Will gets away with some of the things that he says for objections. I'm like, the reason he can get away with it is because of the trust that he's built beforehand. He can challenge people because it doesn't, a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to feel salesy on these calls and I don't want to overcome objections. And I'm like, the reason you don't want to do that is because you feel like it's coming off the wrong way, because it is, because you did not build up that trust beforehand. Versus Will can get away with it because they don't view it as him being pushy or salesy because he's already built the trust with them before at the beginning of the call. So when they get challenged, they know it comes from a good place. Versus if you're getting sold to somebody for something you don't need, it's like, hey, they're just doing it to benefit you or themselves, right? I think that's something that helps a lot when you get to the end and there's an objection. You can challenge people because of that charisma you had at the beginning call and the energy and the trust you built.
Yeah, and I would add one more thing is the charisma and the energy is super important, but it's the conviction of the product and the service. If you believe above all else that you have the best product, the best service, and that you're going to get the results for the person that they're looking for, that's going to come across in your tone. Tone is so important. There's ways to train tone. You have like the Jeremy Miners with the 5 C's and like, oh, I love all that stuff. But one of the best ways to train your tone is to have conviction in what you're saying. And so if that comes across, it just comes across so much more powerful. And sales is such a strong skill set. If you're going to learn any skill ever, it's sales. The reason is because it's going to help you with everything in your life. It's going to help you influence people. And there's two types of influence. And this is why I think one of the reasons is why people are so uncomfortable with sales is because they have this negative mindset around sales because they think that it's manipulation instead of persuasion. Because at the end of the day, there's two types of influence and all sales is influence. Influence is just building trust. There's manipulation and there's persuasion. Manipulation is where you are influencing somebody to do something that's going to benefit you and hurt them. Persuasion is where you're influencing somebody to do something that's going to benefit them and you. That's why you want to be on the side of persuasion, because you know that the product and service, you have so much conviction behind your product and service that you know that there's a 96% chance that you're going to change their life. That's what you have to go into those calls with and be able to influence people in the best way possible so that they can be successful in their own life.
One of the drills we have people do, we do role playing probably once a month where we take a couple people and say, hey, give us a hot take. Give us something you're so convicted on, even that everybody's against you on it. We had one of our PTs say she hates all condiments, even on a hot dog, she eats them dry. We were roasting her shit. We were telling her stupid, blah, blah, but she stood 10 toes down on it, right? And when you're able to find things in your life that you have that much conviction on, and you reverse engineer, like, why do I believe so heavily in this, right? And then from there, try to bring it back over to the sales side of what you're providing as a service, because realistically, a lot of the issues people run into, they don't need a new script. They don't need a new manipulation technique or objection handling. They need to be bought into your practice. Like, why was your practice started? Is your vision even big enough to house people underneath it so that they can live their vision underneath your vision, right? And I think a lot of people just don't dream big enough, right? Told by everybody, hey man, like, you're going cash. People want to use their insurance. Hey, you're PT, I could just go on ChatGPT and learn about it. It's like, well, no. You have to believe the service you're providing and your skill level is at a level where you can train others and build a community that will impact not just the patients you're working with, but also that everybody you hire is now less burnt out, more fulfilled with their practice. I think that's where the conviction comes from. You need to have a big vision. Let's start there because we look at the outcome we're trying to deliver, higher conversion rates. We look at the behaviors that instill that outcome. It's people having this conviction, but what's the big belief that drives that behavior, that drives that outcome? I want to pass it to Ben. Ben, in your practice at Pro+Kinetix, what's the major belief everybody needs to have as soon as they step inside the building to make sure they're a good fit to the team, but also make sure they can hit their KPIs and continue sustaining with such a successful practice?
Yeah, the main thing is our biggest vision is we want to change healthcare. We know that in order for us to do that, we also have to be the best. It's who you surround yourself with. It's how you lead yourself. Because how you lead yourself is also how other people are going to respond to you and your mission. So if they see that you're leading by example, they're going to follow suit. And then by doing that, you create this awesome team that any person that comes in that's new is also surrounded by that same culture and that same energy. And they're like, I want to be part of this. I've got to be an A player as well, right? So it starts with you. And that's also important is that first hire that you make. They have to be an absolute killer because they're going to set the tone. There's a difference between the owner and that first employee. There's different levels to it. And the second person that you bring on is going to respond differently based on that first hire. Even if you are leading yourself super well, if that other person is not an A player, they are going to gravitate somewhere in between you and that B player or C player. It's really about how you lead yourself and the conviction of what you believe in what you're doing and your mission statement. We've got this thing too, is when we're going through an interview process, which is a sales process. And Will talked about the most important skill set that you can achieve is sales. If you can do that, it's going to impact you in so many different ways in your life. And it's funny because sales is the skill set that physical therapists avoid the most. They hate sales, right? And it's also a big reason why we're stuck where we're at in the profession, in my opinion. During the interview process on the final call, on that final interview, I'm going through our mission statement. There's 4 main parts of that. I'm walking them through X, Y, and Z of our mission statement so they can get fired up or be not fired up by it. And it's also weeds them out or sells them on that position as well. They can also tell what conviction you have when you were stating those, like, why do you do what you do? Like when I get done with my final interview, like, hey, what stood out to you or what resonates with you? I had somebody that's like, I'm ready to run through a brick wall. Literally had that happen this month where they get done. Like, that is like exactly what I've been looking for. Like, this is what I'm super fired up about this. That's because of the conviction in which I said it, right? So it's the conviction that you hold within yourself that sets the tone.
Will, what do you guys got for your vision?
I think it's almost like the same thing that we talked about last week, where it's like you can't say, oh, we're 101 cash PT, right? Like how Ben said, it's like, oh, like we want to change the healthcare, right? We all want that. I think all three of us on the call would agree that we don't want to change the healthcare system. Like we hate the healthcare system. Like I started the movement shop out of absolute pure hate, like in PT school and anger. Like it's bad. I've been an angry guy. I'm not like that anymore. But anyway, in PT school, I was on a rotation. And I was like, this whole system is broken. Like we're rewarding people who don't actually care about their health, right? And then the people who actually do care about the health, the runners, the fitness athletes, the golfers, the tennis, the surfers, the people who actually take care of themselves are the ones that fall through the cracks and are paying these high premiums on health insurance that they don't even use because they don't go to the doctor. And then when they do go, they get sent to these shitty insurance-based PT clinics. They're doing clamshells and bridges and wondering why they can't get back to running. And like the whole system's fucked. And so like the whole thing is like, I hate that. And like, I want to make the old model of PT like absolutely obsolete. And when I say that story in our interviews, if people's eyes don't light up and like Ben said, are ready to run through the brick wall, they are not coming on the team because I'm not willing to sacrifice the culture and the mission for a body. Right. And so at the end of the day, like that's my why. That's why I started this in the first place is I wanted to create a place where everyday athletes can actually have a place to come and actually change their lives in the best way possible and not fall through the cracks in the shitty healthcare system, doing clamshells and bridges and injections and resting for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's why our insurance companies are all insane anyways in the first place. And so that's our why. And I was actually just talking to Ricky about this. He's our performance director. That's what we call our clinic directors and Torrance. And when he came on, we had one PT before him. So sweet, amazing human being. My first hire, never should have hired her. Not a great fit for the team, but amazing person. I remember we were doing our annual meeting and I had Ricky come and we were going over our goals. She would say these goals she wanted to convert at like XYZ. Here, Ricky came right before and was like, I'm going to convert at 70%. I'm going to fill my schedule up in 3 months. Like that's what's going to happen. And then she went, all of her numbers were below his. And so it was like, here's this new guy that's ready to come run through a brick wall that's surpassing the person that's already here. And it's like, what do you think happened? No, she's no longer on the team. Ricky's still on the team leading everything. And it's like, you have to have that conviction. You have to have that charisma and you have to be on that same page where it's like, I'm here to change the healthcare system. I'm going to build a great team and I'm going to change the lives of our clients. And like, that's why I started the movement shop was 3 reasons. Like fucking hate our healthcare system. I want to change it. I want to do really dope people on my team. And I want to change their lives and the lives of my family. Simple as that.
100%. I'm going to make you a t-shirt, dude. It's going to be a movement shop fueled by pure hatred.
Well, it was fueled by that. Now it's not.
Because like, I think when people listen to conversations like this, they get hesitant to take actionable changes because they're like, oh man, now I have to rewire my brain. This is all fluffy stuff. I have to change the way I think. And that's why everyone's so drawn towards tactics and strategies. What's a quick hack I can throw into my script to change conversion rates? Like, dude, there is none. Nothing is going to change it unless you change the way you view your entire business and your team and how you train and how you build that culture. Another way to allow us to transform and change more people's lives is in your previous time coaching folks on the sales process. How fast can someone realistically move their close rate when focusing on the beliefs and focusing on the things that we're trying to instill?
I think you're either going to be good or you're not going to be good. Like there's skills that you can develop in sales, but until you have the conviction and the charisma and the energy, you'll never convert as good as somebody that does have all that stuff. Conviction is 80% of sales. If you don't believe in the product, you're not going to be able to sell anything because humans are professional bullshit detectors. We've been like that forever, even since caveman time, right? Had to have that in our DNA so that you don't get killed by some other caveman that's going to bop you on the head and take your wife. And so it's still in our DNA. And when you're doing sales calls, you have to have that conviction of the product and you have to start there. And you can follow these people and do courses on sales, read books, how to win friends and influence people, go give or sell more. There's so many books on sales that are so good. Until you have the conviction, you have to start there or else it's not going to matter. So in terms of how fast can you get the conviction, that's how fast you'll improve your conversions.
So Ben, on the folks that you've trained and you've seen these transformations of their close rates on their discovery calls and even on their evaluations, you've seen those transformations of them being more convicted in what they're doing. Yeah, same question, like how quickly can someone do that? Give me like 1 to 3 actionable things they can do to actually target their conviction versus just changing their script a little bit or something else?
So I'll give you some exercises that I have my team go through. One is the 50 reasons why. Write down 50 reasons why somebody would benefit from working with you over anybody else. First 10 are pretty easy. 20 is not too bad. Those last 30, you really got to grind for. So I have every single team member do it. Why should patients be at Pro+Kinetix over anybody else? We have all of our individuals that do phone calls, our physical therapist, and part of their onboarding is they meet one-on-one with every single physical therapist. We have 15 physical therapists. It clogs up their first 2 weeks, but they need to be convicted in what they're selling. And at the end of the day, what they're selling is that physical therapist, and they need to be confident in that. So we make sure that they meet one-on-one for 15 to 30 minutes with each PT to learn more and build up rapport. They're remote too. And so it's good for culture and camaraderie too. So that's something that we do. But just tell a story about that. We had a PT that we onboarded about 2 years ago, and they just weren't a very solid clinician. They did okay with sales. They just weren't a super solid clinician. And our salespeople can see the admin emails that come in and the concerns that patients were dropping off and saying why they were dropping off. It affected our close rates for our phone calls because anytime that they knew that they had the most openings, right? And so it was kind of a revolving door, a loop of more openings. Well, they have more openings because they're not a great clinician and they can't fill them because their sales team doesn't feel confident pitching them, right? And so it just went back to the product and how important that is and the conviction on the best PTs. It's super easy to keep them full, not just because they retain patients well, but because of the conviction of the show up rate from our sales reps. It's really interesting. The subconscious beliefs that our sales team has around each practitioner as well. So those are the two main things that we do to help out with that. And then also going through and reading our reviews. We got over 1,000 5-star reviews. So I'm like, all right, go and hit start. We literally have people read through our reviews during their onboarding to see.
That's funny you said that, Ben, because we had the same exact thing happen last year. One of our PTs, he closed really well, crushed evals, failed impairments, and was pretty good at sales. He closed well, but he wasn't getting great client outcomes. Some of the people were crushing it, other people were a little subpar. This was when I was doing sales calls, and subconsciously I was like, I can't put this person on him. Everybody else was full. His schedule's dwindling. The sales were good, but he wasn't getting client outcomes. We worked with him for 6-7 months and we just had to part ways. But you don't even think about it for the first few months. It's all just in the back of your head. Like, this person sounds great. I want them to get good results. They're going to be a great connection. I'm going to put them with this person instead. And then the other PT schedule's dwindling and you're like, oh, I got to fill it. And then you just it's like this revolving door and you just have to part ways at a certain point.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you have the clinical skills that match that confidence, that is probably one of the strongest things that helps people build conviction. Is first you need to have a clinical skill set that you know is differentiated. A lot of that clinical skill set can be bolstered by the team surrounding that PT, right? They're in a clinic and all around them are fucking killers of salespeople and also clinicians. They're going to be like, I need to up my game. And people do two things in those situations. One, they start diving deeper into their imposter syndrome. Like, oh man, I'm never going to be good at these people. Or two, they look at it as an opportunity. Man, I'm surrounded by killers. I have every single one of these people to ask questions to, and everyone has the open door. Everyone wants to help me get better. There's no place better for me to build myself into the clinician I want to become than here. And if they do the second route, they're going to be a killer. That's the people we want, the people that look at situations like that and don't falter down and hide, but look at things as opportunities. And I think like you said, sales is everywhere. And that's one of the part of sales is during the interview, selling that potential physical therapist or even salesperson on how strong the team is. The Google reviews does a great job of that. We actually right now have Claude doing Claude cowork of it crawls our Google reviews every week, all the new ones, and it adds it to a living Google Doc document that's ready to read, ready to go and sorted out by a doctor and sorted out by body part. So we can use it for training new people. They can read it up on the business, but we can also use it for like, hey, I want this landing page to have specific quotes from a shoulder pain patient that worked with this doc or that doc, whatever. And it helps us keep those a lot more organized. It's been a game changer. That's a really good point you brought up there, Ben.
What you can do too is also I know you guys tell stories like during phone calls and during evals. We have a similar document like that, or it's like a dashboard where our salesperson can go in there and type in knee pain with running, and it will scan all our reviews and it'll pull up an exact story that they can tell on there too. It's interesting. Some people struggle with telling stories and they need to reference a very specific one on it. And so like, all right, we'll build this thing out. So that's something you guys can do too if anybody's having.
Yeah, that's really smart. So now if we get into like kind of a little bit more of the actual objections people get on the call, what I want to do with this segment is I want to make it to where it's like, like quick fire, because there's a lot of objections. If we sit in every single objection, and this is a mindset I feel like a lot of the PTs that don't do well or sales people that don't do well get into is like, oh, but what if? But what if? Oh, what if they say this? And they think of all these little nuanced, tiny little things, and they're just building obstacles where they don't need to have obstacles, right? So if we go into those 5 main objections Will brought up earlier, I'll name them off. What I want you guys to do is I want you guys to tell me like what has been probably the most impactful, whether it's a belief shift, whether it's a sentence you use, whether it's a way you train your team, what's been the most impactful for your team to overcome these objections and get to a point where they become easy to handle. Now, obviously, we want to be able to pre-have it early, landing pages, beginning of conversations, but let's assume these are happening toward the end when the quote unquote pitch is happening on the phone call. Let's just assume that, so we take another variable out. But the first one I want to start with is let me talk to my spouse. So I know we get that a ton. So Will, what's the biggest impact you made on your team when it comes to this objection?
Yeah, we just say something like, I totally understand, I talk to my spouse about all big financial decisions or big decisions as well. And like some of the clients that we work with, I can tell you like this guy, Sean, that we worked with him a couple of weeks ago. He started with us. He wanted to talk to his spouse as well. One of the cool things is his knee pain's already gone and now he's back running with his wife. So when you say like you want to talk to your spouse, do they know how much this has been bothering you lately? Like, are they on the same page with all this? And then sometimes they're like, no, they have no idea. And it's like, okay, maybe we should have a conversation about that first, because if they don't know how much this is affecting you, when you go and you're like, hey, can I go drop $3,000 on physical therapy? They're going to be like, on what? Like, no, that doesn't make any sense. And it's going to get shut down. And the problem with that is if they say no, then what are we going to do about it? Because now it's like, okay, they say no. That means that they don't want to support you. That doesn't make any sense. And then next thing you go on a run and your knee gets worse, now you're going to start resenting them for this. Like, that's not cool. And so that's what we do is we have a conversation around what objections would your spouse have to moving forward? Or what another good one that we like to do is say your wife was in here and it was her knee and she came on this. Would you support her making this decision? They're like, yeah, of course I would. And it's like, okay, why? And then they can list out all the things that they know why they would support them. Like, you guys are one-on-one and this is the exact place I want to be. And the progression, there's a running specialist. Like, okay, cool. I think we need to have that conversation. And so instead of going home and asking for permission, let's go and ask for some support. And then we can kind of do this all together. Because the last thing you want to do is have it against you versus them and their spouse. You will lose that all the time. What you want to do is you want it to be you, them, and their spouse against their knee pain. Now you guys are all on the same team and you're going to win that every time.
Spouse objections are usually bullshit. Like, it's funny. Every new PT that we onboard, they're like, yeah, I just keep getting hit with tons of spouse objections half the whole time. It's not because we just put a bunch of married people only on the new guys schedule. Not what we do, right? It's all just smoke screen. Anytime you get a spouse objection, okay, to understand why I speak with your spouse. Besides a spouse, do you feel like this is a program on a scale of 1 to 10 that you've been looking for to help you get back to X, Y, and Z? They'll probably say like an 8, because usually people that have spouse objections, it's not the true objection. I was like, yeah, probably 8. Great. 8's pretty. What got you to an 8 that you're so gung ho about this program? Let's say X, Y, and Z. I like to use that as ammo for the true objection. And like, I love that it's one-on-one. Like Will said, want to work with a running specialist. You have worked with tons of runners. You have had proof. You have had great reviews, and top of that, you guys be able to do that. Great. Well, there's still something missing. What would have to happen for you to get to a 10? What they say there is that true objection. Like, they want to use their insurance. From there, at the beginning, I was able to isolate and figure out what was valuable to them to get them to an 8. I'm going to use that against them to help them see, hey, for example, if they have the insurance objection, like, yeah, the only thing that'll hold me back to the insurance. But like, well, you said X, Y, and Z are important to you. You've tried the insurance. This is why we don't take insurance. We can give you all the things that got you to an 8. Right. And so that's something too, that I always isolate. Anytime that somebody gives me an objection, I am automatically back in my mind, like, bullshit. Let's isolate this and make sure it's actually a true objection.
I agree. I think every objection is a smokescreen. Like every single, it's really just they don't see the value yet, or they can't make a decision. I'll give you an example. I love sales. I teach sales. I do sales all day. I signed up for one of the Hermosi workshops. It was like $5,000. And I was talking to the guy and he's like, all right, cool, let's do this. What card do you want to put? And I was like, no, let me go talk to my wife real fast, make sure the calendar's all set. Right when I said that, I was like, there's not a chance I'm talking to my wife about it. She doesn't even know about these workshop things. She doesn't care. She wants to make sure that we're providing for the kids and the family. And I called him right back. I was like, dude, I don't need to talk to my wife. Let's do it. I don't know why I did that. And at the same time, I was like, I just didn't want to make that decision right there. And that's everything. All objections are smoke screens. 99% of the time, just can't make a decision. I'll give you another example, like an extreme one. If you went to the doctor and they're like, you have a coronary artery blockage, we need to do open heart surgery tomorrow. Are you going to be like, how much is it? Let me ask my wife. It's like, no, of course you're going to go do it. If you don't do it, and now we're not in the situation where they're going to die, but we are in the situation where their life is going to be compromised and they're going to have to, like, the opportunity cost of going on for another 5 years as knee pain, not be able to run, that you're never going to get those 5 years back. And it's even more important than that, because those are 5 years of your youth. You're going to be 5 years older at that point. And so all objections are smoke screens, in my opinion. We just didn't do a good enough job getting into a deeper conversation and figuring out why. Why is this so important? And like, if you have somebody that's like, oh yeah, I have this knee pain, I can't squat at the gym, right? And now you're talking about insurance and cost. But if you would have dug a little bit deeper and known that the guy that has the knee pain who can't squat at the gym has 2 kids, and the reason that he's going to the gym so much is because he saw his dad as now the strong guy, and he wants to be the strong guy for his kids and show them what it's like to raise strong men. Now we're talking about that. And so it's like $3K to fix your knee pain so you can get back to squatting, maybe $3,000 to make sure that you can be a strong dad and raise strong men. That's not even in the same zip code. That's not
I'd
even
pay 10 times that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just about getting down to the real reason why people are on the phone with you. If you do that well, you're not going to get objections.
I think any of these objections we go through, which probably we shouldn't even do, is like whether to take my insurance or I have to think about it. All of those things are sometimes just the inability for this person to make a decision, but like kind of almost fighting their own cognitive dissonance, right? They're like, oh, I just told you I want to be better. I want this knee pain to go away. I want to be this person for my family. And now you say the price, and now I have all these things in my head of why I shouldn't do it. And I think that that's the thing we teach our clinicians too, is like, has it ever occurred where like somebody has to go think about it, talk to a spouse? Do you think there's going to be more reasons out there for them to work with you, or only reasons for them to not work with you? Right? If you think about that, this person really needs your help, and you're thinking somebody else is better equipped at telling them how much they need your help. It's like, no, dude, let's get them to tell people to pre-frame it. I tell them to say, hey, I'm not here to pressure you to say yes, but you might feel some pressure to make a decision. And a reason why is because the situation you're dealing with, whether it's knee pain or XYZ, a lot of it comes out of the decision-making process you take yourself through every time the hard decision has to be made, right? Change my diet. Should I change my sleep? All those times where you had to make a decision, you end up making the decision that gave you more knee pain or delayed your recovery. I want you to look at those decision-making processes and think, why am I making these decisions? And if you continue down that road, is there any chance of you actually making a different decision than what's led you here in the first place? Or like, well, no. So is it okay if I push you on some of the decision-making processes you're doing? And I always tell my people too, is like, always give them permission to say no. Because if you give them permission to say no, now it's a choice. Now it's not being sold to, now it's a conversation. I tell them, hey, at any time here, if you feel like I'm overstepping boundaries, asking questions that are too personal, whatever it is, just tell me to shut up. I get really excited when I help people. I really want to transform your life. And sometimes that comes with digging a little deeper on questions. But if it's a little bit too much, just tell me shut up. At any time, you can walk out of this room perfectly okay. Not going to hurt my feelings. So that gives them the stage to be like, oh, this person's really like, he's just here to help me. He's not here to sell me. That changes a lot of the objections we even get at the end. A lot of times it doesn't even require us to wade through the BS objections and isolate the real one, because they're already ready to give you the real one, whether it's price, fear, or uncertainty, whatever it is, we can actually uncover that at that point. So end off with this call. If you were to give anybody listening to this call that really wants to make a change in their ability to convert on the phone or actually in person, it's a parallel world. We want them to record their sessions for sure, right? We want them to listen back on their phone calls so they have proof of what they're doing. Now, once they start doing that, what's the action plan when they're listening to these things or watching themselves back on an eval or listening to these phone calls again? How do they start making changes in the way they're doing that?
Yeah. First things first is like, build up your charisma, build up your conviction and your energy around the call. And you don't have to have a high energy. Zach and I are like this high energy, and Ben has a lower energy, but it's authoritative. So use your natural skill sets. If you're not somebody that's super high energy, don't go into a high energy thing, because it's not going to feel natural. But build up that charisma, build up that conviction around the product. Then from there, you need to create this connection at the very beginning of the phone call as soon as you possibly can. It's not like, oh, how's your day going, right? It's the first thing that they say that you can create a connection to. Do it. It's like, oh yeah, just picking my kids up from school. It's like, oh sweet, I have 3 kids too. I have a month-old, man. We're in it right now. They're like, oh dude, you're in it, right? Boom, you just created a connection. Now you can go deeper on the call. And the last one is, you gotta know how to handle objections and obstacles and guide people to make the best possible decision for them. Read books like The Charisma Myth, How to Win Friends, Influence People. All those books are great. You have to practice, like Zach, you said, listen to the phone calls, see what's going well, see what's not going well, and practice those objection handling so that it seems natural. You start to be able to play chess on the phone where you're going to ask this question, you know the answer they're going to give, and then you ask the follow-up and you just dive deeper, 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 and help make sure that you're going to get them to the most successful place that they can be. And that's not necessarily saying yes. It's helping them make the best decision for them, which 95% of the time is going to be working with you guys.
Yeah. And Ben, what do you got to add to that?
Yeah, I think Will nailed it on all those points. I think you'll need to know what good looks like, right? How can you analyze how something went if you don't know what good looks like? And so surrounding yourself with others that are doing a really good job on that first phone call. You don't need to go word from a script, but at least have a framework of what good looks like and what a flow looks like too. So you can actually analyze what good looks like. Because otherwise you just don't know.
Yeah. I'll add one more thing. Like, I love sales because I know what happens on the other end of the yes. When they say yes on the phone, they come in for the eval, and they know where their problem is. They have the game plan. They say yes there, and they work with us on a program. Tears of joy. They're back to running. Their pain is gone. They're back playing with their kids. They're running with their spouse. They're enjoying their summer. And it's all from things that they thought would never be solved. That's my favorite part of sales. I get to change people's lives. I don't get to change people's lives. I get to give people the opportunity to change their own life. That's the best part. I know what's on the other side of a yes, and I know what's on the other side of a no. And that's why I push so hard. Like, there's this analogy. It's like if I'm walking down the road with my mom, we're walking down the road and we want to go to lunch. If to the right is falling off a cliff and we just both die, or the left is where we're going to lunch, and my mom says we need to go right, at what point do I stop saying, no, we need to go left? And we're like, yeah, let's just go right. Like, we'll do what you want. Never, right? I'm always going to go left because that's where lunch is, and I know right is a cliff. And that's the same thing with our clients. If they say no, and we don't do a good job helping to persuade them to make the best decision for them, what's going to happen? They're going to take more time off. They're going to go see their MD who had 4 hours of rehab in their whole entire schooling. They're going to do an injection. They're going to tell them to take another 6 weeks off. They're going to do an MRI and an X-ray, show some millimeter tear, do some surgery that's not necessary, be off for another 6 to 8 weeks in a sling. They're going to go to some shitty rehab where they're doing yellow bands for 9 months. And now they just wasted 2 to 3 to 4 years of their life, not any better. And they're actually in a worse spot. And so I know what happens when people say no. And that's why I have so much conviction for them to say yes, because I know what's on the other side of a yes, and I know what's on the other side of a no.
That's potentially a positive of the no. It could go a lot worse than that. There's no surgery that's actually safe. And then the day you're going under the anesthesia. What happens if they do make some through surgery? Now you got pain medications. We know what can happen there. People lose their entire lives off that shit. So it can be even more catastrophic than what Will said. Obviously that's more rare, but that is also another case. And the thing is, that's what sucks. And I think why it doesn't land home all the time is you don't necessarily know what happens to these people. If people had a tracker to see what happened to these people you did not convert, you have an obligation to be great at sales. If you had a tracker of people, I cringe to think about the people that I was not able to sell. If I knew where they're at today, I'd be beating myself up on it. I think it'd do some good if we could see what happened to those people because of the conviction that we'd be able to sell future people on.
100%, dude. I think what you said, having an ethical obligation to get good at sales, is so spot on. Going back to the very beginning of this thing, it's like having that conviction around sales and enjoying sales as the number one skill that you can develop. That's how you're actually going to change people's life. If you don't have it, you're missing out on opportunities and you're doing your clients a disservice.
Yeah, 100%. Now, if you're listening to this episode and you're not ready to hammer into your sales process, figure out what's going on, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, this is the stuff that's transformed all of our lives, all of our practices, financial freedoms that we didn't really dream of in physical therapy school, right? We didn't sign up to become physical therapists and go to school to make a ton of money, but now we're able to help so many people make such big impacts in our employees' lives, our patients' lives, in our families' lives by being financially in a position where we have time to make investments and being a little more financially free. I think listening to this is the first step in that, because unless you can talk to somebody in a way that gets them to want to transform their own lives, it's going to be tough for you to transform yours. I appreciate you guys listening on this. If you do have specific questions to ask, even if it's on this specific episode, go to www.clinicalmarketer.com/ask. And it's a live webpage that you can go and ask any questions you have, and we will pick and choose at least once or twice a month We will go through those exact questions and give you exact answers that we would give as if you were one of our clients, right? And we want to make sure you guys take action from this, because this podcast only works well when people listening to this actually get their beliefs changed and actually want to make changes. So if that requires you to ask a specific question to your situation to make that change, that's what we want to open that up to you guys. So I want to thank my co-hosts, Ben Bagge and Will Schop, for this amazing conversation. Hope you guys took something from it, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Cheers.